Yeah.
Hey everyone, my name's Andy. I'm from the Finding Value Finance channel. Today we've got my friend Gabe. He wanted to come on the channel, share his story. He's part of the YouTube channel. He's been part of the channel actually since 2020. I'd see him in the comment section all the time. He's making comments about oil, precious metals.
A lot of comments. Yep.
Yeah, silver, all sorts of stuff. He's also part of the Platinum membership on the channel, or on the website, I should say. And he wants to share his story of what's going on, a little bit about his involvement with the channel and the website, and also kind of how he's changed his life based off the channel. So thank you for coming on, Gabe. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, how he's changed his life. I mean, it sounds a bit cheesy, but it is kind of true because I've moved from Toronto. I'm in Canada. I've moved from Toronto to Alberta, which, as we know on the channel, is a place where oil is pretty big in Canada. So I embarked on a career in the oil business in the last few months. So I came over, I started in something called snubbing, which is putting the final production pipe in natural gas wells. It's kind of dangerous because the wells are live. It's one of the higher paid energy services around. I left that and I've gotten into geomatics. So geomatics is like 3D mapping for, could be mines, could be energy projects, could be construction. So like land surveying would be for construction. They want to know the points on two ends of a bridge or whatever to make a meet up. You know, you've probably seen those guys on the highway. We also do like underground locating. So if you're going to, do a pipeline, or you want to know where a pipeline already exists, you got to locate where these pipelines are in the ground, because hitting a pipeline in the ground is obviously a major problem. Try to avoid that for sure. And what else? Yeah, that's basically it. So geomatics is what I'm doing.
So how'd you find the channel, and how's it impacted kind of your life and stuff?
Well, yeah, I guess I found the channel end of 2020. I sort of had a sense that the world was going through a bit of a transition. COVID came up. I guess I was actually more into kind of like real estate was my previous investing avenue to break out of the rat race, if you will, which I think what we're all trying to do is achieve some level of freedom, right, with our finances. Real estate was, at least at that point, what I thought was the way to do it. In Toronto, real estate in Toronto has gotten really expensive. In all of Ontario, it's gotten very expensive. So kind of too many people got into real estate, and I started to get away from that. My dad's always been a big silver guy. He's always been talking about silver for the last decade. And so I knew Eric Sprott, and we would listen to Eric Sprott and Craig Hemke on Fridays. I think they released their thing, Sprott Weekly. So we were listening to that for a while. And I thought, you know what, I should really look into cycles, because I think I'd heard about a real estate cycle is like an 18-year cycle or whatever. And I understand the fact that things move in kind of waves, like this is human nature. Things kind of move in patterns, right? And then it gets too hot, and then it kind of dies off because there's too much investment in it or whatever. So I thought I should Google commodity cycles. And I guess I Googled it, and I think I put it into YouTube, and I put commodity cycles into YouTube, and I found one of your videos. And I watched it, and I was like, yo, this is pretty legit. Like this guy, I think I watched a couple. I didn't really know too much about uranium and oil, but I knew about gold and silver from Sprott. And you tied together basically the housing market, interest rates, and the whole thing, right? So if I'm going to summarize the thesis of the channel real quick, just because I know my mom's probably going to watch this, and I've been telling her about the commodities and stuff like that. We're going into an inflationary environment with rising interest rates, right? So that's kind of the crux of the issue. In your theory, inflation is caused mostly because new loans on houses, so first-time home buyers, expands the money supply because that's a new loan coming into the system. It's not your second house. You've already got a loan on the first one. It's your first house, so first-time home buyers. So you look at the demographics and you see that while people in their early 30s or whatever, that demographic is large. So there's a lot of people coming into their home buying years. We're probably going to get a lot of new first-time home buyers. It's going to be an expansionary phase of real estate, which then ties into, the rest of the whole thesis. So we're entering an inflationary time with rising interest rates, and that is a huge change in how the money's going to move. Like the money's going to flow to different areas based on this fact. So I thought, well, that's pretty good. And I hadn't actually heard anybody say stuff like that. I hadn't heard anyone kind of tie everything together. And then you showed the chart of basically commodities to the S&P 500. I think it's the main chart. I've also seen it on like Merritt and Cadusa. Like it's kind of just like the granddaddy of charts, ratio charts, you know. And 2020, we were at a huge bottom. So you can just see that tangible goods compared to the S&P 500, which is more like Facebook, Google, stuff like that right now. It's at a low, or at least it was at a huge low. So you're like, okay, there's been a radical bunch of money that's gone into Google and Facebook and Tesla and all those things, which if you look around, it has. I've got buddies who've made like 10x on Tesla since 2020. I mean, it's gone crazy. And if you listen to them talk, you know, Tesla's doing well and whatever, but they just kind of think it'll keep going anyways. In my mind, it's like there's a shift happening. I think we're going more into tangible goods, so real stuff, food, energy, gold, metals. Like, you know, we can go into my background a bit, but I was doing carpentry for TV shows. And I got a science degree before that. So I've kind of got a bit of a mix of like, you know, the thinking stuff as well as the doing stuff. And I know that people have kind of forgot about like the physical world and like how reality works when it comes to construction and stuff like that.
Yeah, so you became part of the channel late 2020, and then you were a carpenter, and you were working as a carpenter for a little while. What made you change your mind to go to oil? Why the big flip? Is it the commodity cycle that's coming into cycle? Like what made you change your career or your career path?
Well, yeah, there was a few things that happened at the end of 2021 that sort of made me take a sabbatical from TV, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm not going to get into that too much here, but I took a year off from television and got into organic farming. So I thought, well, if the world goes to crap, it'll be good to know how to grow food, right? And farming, I thought, I don't know, I've always kind of been interested in farming. I was watching the channel, and, you know, to me, we're going into an energy crisis. I know these oil companies are making money. I know they needed workers. You know, I've been watching your videos with Shubham and stuff like that. Like, they need young guys to come out here and do this stuff, and there's just not enough guys. And it makes sense because everyone's been interested in their iPads. A lot of the young folks don't want to, you know, you saw it in carpentry. The young folks don't want to build stuff with their hands that much these days, right? So I thought there's a deficit of workers. I could go over there and probably, you know, do well. So, yeah, and as far as, you know, making money, you want to work for places that are making money because then they have more money to pay you, right? That's kind of like a no-brainer that I learned in my mid-20s. If you're working for someone who's broke, you're going to be broke. So, yeah, coming over to the oil business, it just, I don't know, I'm kind of an outdoorsy guy as well, so the whole thing kind of fits. Mm-hmm. And after watching the channel, you know, I agree that the direction that the governments are going as far as the green energy thing, I think it's probably way overhyped as far as how fast they can do that. Most of the people who make those decisions, I don't think actually do much building. They've probably been in offices for most of their life. So when they say things, I think they don't realize how much work it takes to actually build stuff. And the world's never done this. You know, we've never done a green transition, doing all this electricity stuff. And I don't even know if most people know how electricity is generated. So, like, we're burning more coal now than we've ever burned, right? Last year was the most coal use of all time. So yeah, I moved into oil, and moving from organic farming to oil, people in Ontario, and I'll say Ontario is kind of like the California of Canada, and Alberta is kind of like the Texas of Canada. So going from the California of Canada, organic farming, telling people, you know, oh, I'm getting into the oil business. They're like, why? Like, they didn't get it. It's like, wow, yeah, I think energy is going to be big this decade. So, yeah.
What do people at your work, or I mean, you work at an energy service company, or you work at a big company? You don't have to name the company, And
Yeah.
what's their outlook on oil and the price of oil and all that stuff, kind of internal to the company that you're working at?
Well, the first company snubbing, I proposed this question about how Germany seems to be lacking in natural gas because the Russia thing. And, we kind of work in a natural gas field. Like, do they think this is probably a good area to be in? It was just crickets. Like, I'll tell you, most of the people working here don't think about it too much, right. Depending on where you're at. And then the geomatics stuff, the people are, I think, a little more plugged in. But even still, I haven't gotten into too many macro thesis type conversations with them. I mean, it's been a hard time, I think, in Alberta the last 5 years for most of these folks, because obviously we can see by the stock prices things were going down. So a lot of these people who are in the industry right now have been through the hard part, and they're just starting to. So I think to them, they're not fully sure if this is a real boom or not. They're still kind of like maybe it's going to be bad, because people are getting laid off and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the work portion of it. How has the channel or the website or whatever, how's that impacted your actual investments and stuff? Have you changed anything? Has your paradigm changed at all on how you invest or anything like that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess probably the simplest thing is you want to buy things when they're cheap, which is obvious, but not that obvious, huh?
It's hard to do because you don't know how to tell if something's cheap or expensive. And
yeah,
obviously we do methods to do that, ratios and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, you want to look at the ratios to see what is in favor versus other things. If there's been a lot of momentum, like I'll give you just a quick example. Like, I was buying gold and silver miners that Sprott recommended in mid 2020 and did pretty well for a couple months, and I thought I was a genius. I'm like, bro, I just got into this and I'm making mad money. Like, brilliant, And then obviously everyone was making money if you were buying gold and silver miners at that time. And then I think it came to October, that kind of petered out there. I was still buying, like November, December. I know you sold. I was listening to your channel. I was listening to the channel. You were talking about SM Energy. It was about $4.30 or something like that, $4.30. I was like, that already ran triple off the bottom. I'm not going to buy. Even then, I was still thinking about that. Anyways, obviously now it's like $50. But yeah. So you rotated out of the gold and silver because you sort of look, you're looking at technical analysis. Also, if you look at momentum, and I even suspected this myself, after something's run for a while, how much can it really run? Like there's waves, same going back to these cycles. There's macro cycles and there's smaller cycles within bigger cycles, right? So if something just ran for 6 months, you don't want to be buying it when it's slowing down on the 8th month, because especially with the gold and silver miners, that thing can come back it can come right back to the original start point, which can really hurt in some cases, right? So,
yeah.
So yeah, to summarize that, I mean, you want to look at the waves of momentum, and you want to be buying things when it's cheap. And usually when it's cheap, if you look at, Twitter or whatever, I don't know, people are saying negative things. I don't know. People just get in these different moods and then they just sell. And these things get sold way down. Uranium right now, one guy in the Discord was talking about how he just 5x'd on Fission 3.0 because that, I guess, discovered a little something like end of December and just ripped. I mean, it was down to 7 cents. It takes a bit of guts to buy down there, right? Like, even though it's kind of obvious, it does take, like, you feel it in your stomach, like deep down. You're like, oh God, this is terrible. But that's when you make the money. Yep. So. And I mean, right now, we seem to be on the precipice of what we hope is the next major leg up in the commodities, and that has to do with uranium, that has to do with gold, silver miners. Copper looks like it's coming up. Copper seems pretty, I mean, some of those copper miners really got sold off. It can be a little bit hurtful, a little bit disrespectful, those copper miners. And the oil, yeah, the energy services, we've been talking about for a bit. And I mean, yeah, I think within the next little while, we should get a good run here. So,
Yeah. So like, what are some things that you've learned that you've changed over kind of maybe since 2020? I know you've talked a little bit about it just now, but I mean, you've been on almost every call on the website as well, or a lot of the calls, I should say. What are some things that you've learned or things that you've changed yourself as an investor? Are you more patient? You're more confident? Are you using the ratios? Are you getting better at technical analysis? Like what are some things that have changed since you kind of started on the channel?
Yeah, well, I didn't know any technical analysis back in the day. So like I had kind of an instinctual knowledge that like I got into Bitcoin before it ripped because I sort of saw it's like, I don't know, gathering a little bit of steam there. When something goes into a wedge, it's been bought, it's been sold, it's been bought, it's been sold, it's been bought, it's been sold. It's gonna pressure, and then it makes a decision, right? That makes sense. People are buying it, they're selling it, they can't decide. That's, these patterns, they do make sense on an instinctual level. I just didn't pay too much attention to it before. So obviously the technical analysis, the fundamental analysis, I mean, the easiest things that we do is we look on TradingView to see if the company's making any cash. Like, are they losing an absolute ton of money, or are they starting to go up? Like, that's a pretty good sign. That takes like 30 seconds.
Yep.
Wouldn't known that before. And then you get better at reading, cash flow statements and stuff like that. With these gold and silver miners, you want to know how much cash they have in the bank because they don't make money. So if they're going to be drilling for this stuff, they need to get money from somewhere. And if they don't have any cash in the bank, they're going to dilute your shares. And then all of a sudden you're down like 40%. And you're like, what the heck just happened? Like,
yep.
What's going on? So these are things that I think as you become a little more advanced, you start to look at. Like, I actually just called one of these small copper juniors and said, yo, when are you raising money next? And he's like, well, we're going to raise it in actually the next 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, good. I'll wait for that then. He's like, do you want me to call you after we do it? And I'm like, yeah, that'd be great. So we had like a good half-hour chat. And I guess I wouldn't have had the guts to call this guy probably 2 years ago because I'd be like, I don't want to waste this guy's time.
And you got that off Discord and the website, right? Because I said, why don't we just call the company? And then we had that call there. You can literally call companies and ask them what they're going to do, how they're going to fund stuff, and all that stuff, and they'll tell you.
They will.
It's as weird as it's weird how much they'll share and how much of an advantage you get by actually going and calling. Yeah,
100%. Oh yeah, the guy was telling me all sorts of stuff, and yeah, I wouldn't have done that before. And then I guess a big thing is you just got people who you can bounce ideas off. I said this before when we were offline or whatever, like the biggest thing I think with investing that most people have issues with is just trusting who's telling the truth. Like there's a lot of people saying a lot of different stuff. We're dealing with money here, like hard-earned money. Some people, they've put their entire career into this thing. And people can be very protective of it and whatnot, right? And it's like, I'm not going to get bamboozled by some guy on the internet. So it takes a bit of time to gain trust. But the community, I mean, if you're going in alone, you got no one to bounce ideas off. It can get it can get lonely for one. And then if you get, losses or whatever, you might just pack it in. If you got conviction when you get losses, you should be buying more, or at least learning more. With the community, you can do that sort of stuff, right? So, the Discord and stuff. Yeah, we got the weekly phone chat, which is nice. Kind of talk about the same companies a lot, but and then we got the Discord, which is pretty fun, where you can just kind of chat about whatever. And yeah, if this is a 5-10 year type of thing, what better way to do it than with like a group of people who are also on board? They've also got skin in the game, right?
Yeah, I've got lots of skin in the game. Yeah, I'm living it too.
Yeah, I'm basically all in. I was invested in it and then got in it on a career basis. So, I am the commodity bull market. I am science.
Which is good because, if you're in a technology company and you're working at a tech company and you're in kind of the disinflationary period, that works great for all the people that work at those tech companies. If you work at a oil company or an energy service company and their bottom line is going to be increasing massively over the next 10 years, you can benefit from that. You can buy stock in the company, perhaps, or employee stock purchase plans or bonuses and all that stuff. And if you kind of start where it's ground, you can grow into that company as it grows and is successful. And I think that's actually a pretty smart and brave thing to do, to change your career and go into it. So yeah, I'm totally on board. I wish I knew more when I was younger in which sectors to go into as a career, and to go into the ones that were, flourishing versus ones that are struggling. So, yeah, I mean, good work there. And obviously it took some guts to do that, to change your career and go for it. So, congratulations there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And I mean, that is a good point, which goes back to like mentorship, which, you and Andrew, I think, have had some conversations about that. I think the youth these days are probably in great desire of having mentors who talk about real stuff. In my earlier 20s, I didn't really have anyone kind of giving me real talk as far as like what's something worth putting your energy into that's going to be fruitful for the next chunk of time. Like I did a science degree at University of Waterloo, which is in Ontario. It's regarded as like it's a science and engineering university. It's pretty whatever. But I wasn't that interested in it after doing it. And, my earlier 20s were kind of self-exploration or whatever, was doing some acting and then circled back to carpentry for TV. Anyways, had I had a little more mentorship earlier, could be farther ahead. And that's what everyone says. I mean, you say it too, if someone had taught you this when you started up your career making money, you'd already be like, much farther ahead than you are.
Yep.
But yeah, if you're going to get into an industry, you want to kind of know the macro cycle as far as what's going to be doing well. And at least in our camp, we think it's going to be more resource based for the next decade, right?
Oh yeah. Yep. Definitely oil too. Oil and energy in general.
Oil, energy, yeah. And being in Canada, I mean, I've actually started to realize and appreciate being Canadian how much good stuff we have up here. Like we got oil, uranium is mostly up Saskatchewan there, that Athabasca Basin. We've got gold, silver, copper, I think we got lithium, whatever. So with this geomatic stuff, I kind of figure it's actually good entrance into maybe the executive side of the whole business, because geomatics 3D mapping, you can do that for mines, you can do that for oil, you can do that for anything. So also part of the reason I wanted to come on the channel is just kind of expose myself to the general mining and energy world. And, if people want to, give me a holler on Twitter or whatever. I've got my little card here. I switched my name so it's easy to see now. It's Alberta OG, kind of like ONG, but that was taken. So it's Alberta OG on Twitter. So anyways, yeah, the original Alberta, which I am not actually because I'm from Toronto, but whatever.
Yeah, so that's great. What else would you like to share? Any other topics that you'd like to hit or anything like that?
Well, I got my little list of stuff here. Mm-hmm. We talked a bit about coal. Did we want to talk a bit about the future of the energy game and kind of how China's like making deals with Russia and the BRICS countries and, probably going to a gold standard and stuff like that? Do we want to talk about that, or what's your opinions on that?
Well, I mean, we can do real high level, kind of just how, yeah.
Or do you want to keep it more kind of chill?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't want to get into any like political thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in general to the audience, you know what? Yeah, let's just keep it chill. And I'm in an oil camp right now. So just for the audience here, like this is where an oil camp is. This is a room. So you got a TV here. You got your own bathroom here with a shower. There's a bed, and it's like a small kind of area. You're usually in here mostly to sleep, but they give you food. So you know what? I brought a couple pieces from the kitchen just to kind of show you like what we have here. So this is a croissant with chocolate on it. And you have unlimited of these, right? So you can just eat all day. This is a wrap. This is a half wrap. This is like chicken, whatever, chicken with barbecue sauce. You know, we got waters. After this, I'm going to go over to the kitchen and, you know, you get food on a plate for dinner and breakfast and stuff. But for lunch, you basically just grab sandwiches and wraps, and it's like all you can eat. You just stack up. So the living's pretty good over here.
How long are the work days? Are they basically all day? Do you work 7 days a week? Like, how does that work?
Well, it is kind of unpredictable. So even the last job I had, it's kind of like when they need you, like you go. That's what it is. It's not like Monday to Friday, and it's not 9 to 5. Some of these things, like some of these wells, you know, you could drive half hour to get there. You could drive 5 hours to get there. Sometimes you're way out in the bush. Like we ride quads for this, which are ATVs. Pretty sick, actually. I don't know if you've seen some of the photos that I posted on the Discord, but we put the tracks on them so they roll through the snow. They're badass. And you go out in the bush, you know, sometimes you're staking oil leases. So this is more on the front side of like development. You got to go out into the bush and mark out where the oil lease is going to be, and we mark out where they're going to drill. So last week we were marking out this is the spot that they're going to drill. It's pretty cool.
Yep.
So yeah, the days you should bank on like 12 hours. If it's a shorter day, maybe it's a 10, and then it's kind of like when they need you. So if you have a family, it can be a little more, you know, difficult, which is partly why, as a single young guy, right up my alley as far as getting in here and excelling. You know what I mean? So
yeah. So, you know, let's say we get through this commodity bull market, we make a bunch of money. You know,
yeah,
everyone, hopefully this works out that way. Everyone makes a bunch of money. We're all happy. I'm not saying the ride's going to be easy. It's going to be volatile. We're going to ride all around. We'll have our ups and downs. At least we've got, you know, each other to bounce ideas off of and everything.
Yeah.
What's the next step after we make all this money? What's the purpose of it, right? Why are we in it? Why are we doing all this hard work and living through the volatility? What's on the other side, Gabe? What do you think?
Well, that is the question, because I think a lot of times we get so fired up about making the money, and then, I mean, they usually say it just never ends and you just want to make more money, right? Because it's kind of like a stimulant and you get excited. In my mind, the only thing to do after you've kind of taken care of your material desires is start creating the world as you think it should be, You know what I mean? So you go from, like, I'll just backtrack a little bit. I was told from a mentor back in the day that there's 3 types of people. There's people who create what's going on. There's people who see and understand what's going on. And then there's people who wonder what the heck's going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
We may be in the kind of seeing and understanding what's going on / creating what's going on, because we're here having a conversation. But I think as you take care of your material desires, which would be housing, food, you know, all that sort of stuff, and your money's good, you become more on the first group, which creates what's going on. And I think we're going into a pretty spectacular period here where a lot of the old ways of doing things are coming to a point where they just don't work anymore. I mean, the finance people love to talk about, well, are they going to raise rates? Are they going to pause? Are they going to lower rates? Oh my God, the debt and all this stuff, right? It's like the system isn't going to last very much longer. And I mean, they might try to go to the CBDCs or whatever, or gold-backed currency or whatnot, but there's going to have to be a bit of a reinvention of how things work. Like, would you agree with that?
Yeah, so the way that I always look at things, and I may look at things maybe a little bit different, is I don't really worry about the really big picture stuff, because that I don't have any control over. So really what I look at and what I do is what I have control over. And the things that, like, if I were to give, you know, my opinions on a topic, is whatever you can control, maximize that. Because, you know, investing is partially out of your control, and you have to succumb to whatever the market is going to give you. If it's volatile, you can't change that. It's just the way it is, and you have to basically change your outlook, your paradigm, your view, everything to what the market is. I am a function of what, at least from an investor standpoint, I'm a function of what the market has taught me to be. And so when you look at investing, that is how I view investing. But everything else, you can't worry about the stuff that's outside of your control. If it's within your control, worry about that first and maximize whatever you can that's within your control. So I know a lot of people get worried about, the currencies and all that stuff, but I can't control, and you can't control if a currency goes bad or if something happens on that grand scale. What I can control is I can buy some precious metals and hedge myself if that were to happen. And that's like all you can really do from a protection of money standpoint or something like that. So,
yeah, well, sorry. I mean, you kind of remind me of my older brother when you say that. He's kind of mid-40s, and this gets into the generational battles a bit. My brother, I would say the general vibe of the middle-aged to older-age Canadians is kind of apathetic as far as how much power we have to control what's going on. I think the younger generations are a little bit more like, you know what, we can change that. You're talking about getting your money right and taking care of your family and sort of the base necessities. You can control when you buy stuff. And in a sense, you are a function of the market because you just put money where things are low that you think are going to be going good in the future. I mean, it's kind of basic. You're ahead of the game enough to know, well, you're ahead of the game enough to have money to buy stuff because you make more than you spend and all that sort of stuff. And you see when it's low and you buy it and it just keeps going up over time. That's good. As we expand, though, I think we have the ability to control a little more than maybe you do as far as how we structure the next 30, 40 years of like how humans do things. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. The reason that we get up and do what we do in a given day is mostly because it's been an agreed upon like reality that you were probably born into. I think it's changeable. So as far as, go.
I'll tell you a huge the difference between perhaps, and I'm not going to speak for your brother, but the difference is it's not the age difference. What happens is your priorities change when you have kids, and like when you're young and you're single and you don't have any kids or anything or anyone else to really look after. What you do is you take a grandiose view and then you personally try to change, let's say, the world or change a portion of the world or a portion of society or something like that. You're more willing to take on and sacrifice your time for the betterment of society or something like that. And that's really what a free market is. It's providing more utility to society than taking out of it. That's getting rich. But you're looking at it from a different perspective. Now, when you have kids, you can't necessarily take that type of risk or that type of responsibility on if you're sinking all of your, we'll call it, a lot of your efforts and your time into your kids, because you're going to benefit those kids more when they're young and they're real, young and growing up. You literally have to sacrifice your time and those grandiose big picture things. And you're going to have to sink that time and effort into the kids because that's really when they need it. That's
when they're
probably
young.
The most selfless thing you can do, and something that's very good for, we'll call it, society in the world, is to have like really competent, humans growing up that are happy and like life instead of hate life. And that's like everything gets instilled into you maybe before you're like 5 or 6 years old. So you really got to get that time right for their life. So I think it's just maybe we're at different stages of life. And I know a lot of younger individuals, they have that mindset more so, which is great. And a lot, some of these people with, some of the things that they've done have changed the world. They've made things easier. They've made, we're talking over Zoom here. They've created YouTube. They've created Facebook and all these other different things, which I'm sure are just incredibly valuable to the way that people communicate, to how efficient things are. And I think every generation has had an impact to, some impact on that. And we're just continuing to progress.
No, I like that. And I have no doubt you're doing a great job raising your kids. And I agree that, especially those first 5 years or whatever is a huge shaping of, how they view life and whatnot. For the average kid, do you think that we're handing over a world that is going in a good direction? Like, are you telling your kids that they're going to, I don't know, what sort of world do you think we're handing over right now? If I was going to have a kid today, what would I tell him the world's going to be for him in 30 years? Is it going to be pretty good, do you think? Or?
Well, I mean, so again, that's something that's out of my control. And I mean, you can obviously have opinions on it, but whatever you can have in your control, make that the best environment for yourself and for everyone else who's in that environment. It's just like, the website and all that. I'm trying to create an environment where people are trusting, where we can share opinions, we can look at things, and I take more of a coaching standpoint or mentor standpoint and show you guys, this is how I'm doing it. This is what I'm looking at. This is the strategy that I deploy. These are my portfolio position sizes. I talk about all those things. That's just setting up the conditions for people to potentially be successful. It's still, they still have some ownership for that. And same with the kids, they're going to still have some ownership of becoming a good person and being hard on them when they need to be, when I need to be hard on them to figure out what's right, what's wrong, and basically scribe out their own path. Because I'm not here to tell them that this is where you're going. I'm just going to say, I've got your back, like, go for it. That's really what I'm trying to do. Just like everyone else on the website, it's like, look, guys, this is what I see. You can go for it. It's up to you. But eventually you'll start learning that stuff. But, from a big picture view and, handing over the world is going to be what the world is. You're just going to have to adapt to whatever that world is. People get dealt different hands. If you get dealt a bad hand, you can't do anything about it. If you've got parents that aren't that great, or maybe your impression is your parents aren't that great, you can't change that. I can't change my parents. My kids can't change their parents. It's just the way it is. And everybody, some people are born into wealth. Some people are born poor. Some people are born into different countries that aren't very conducive for moving up, we'll call it socioeconomic, ladders, so to speak. And you just have to play whatever cards you're dealt. So I think the world is changing rapidly, and I couldn't even tell you what in 30 years the world's going to look like. I can't even imagine what it's going to be like in maybe even 10 years. Things are rapidly progressing at paces that I would have never thought possible. And some of the things are good, and some of them I think are bad. And some are good and bad basically at the same time. They're intertwined. Like a phone is really great, but I think there's good attributes that it has, and I think there's bad attributes that cell phones have. People are addicted to them. They've got problems. They're not as maybe interconnected with other people, and but they're great for finding information very quickly in the middle of nowhere. So there's good and bad with a lot of things that we develop, and I think that the world's going to change in ways that I don't know possible. What's your opinions on it?
Oh,
did I have a good answer?
Got a little long. I started to zone out a bit. I'll just go back to the original point, which is, I think you've done a great job with the community that you've created here. Like, we're all learning as we go. And I don't know, you've created an environment where people can ask questions. You simplify things. So if you feel like, you're new or whatever, you can ask things that might be dumb. I find a lot of people, they're in their own little bubble. So the finance guys, when they talk, they're talking about all this stuff. The average person, they're like, what the heck are these guys talking about? You know what I mean? And then I think about my parents and investing, especially my mom didn't know like anything. My dad kind of dabbled in various stuff, but to be able to make this stuff more accessible to the average person, I think is huge. That's one of the things that's shifting, especially with this technology that you're talking about. We can do YouTubes and stuff. The access to good content is, and the quality of the content is getting higher and higher. Like even your videos over the last 2 years have just been getting better and better, which happens, I think, as you hone the product and people come in with their different questions, and then you sort of think about it a little deeper, and it keeps getting better. So I guess kudos to you on starting the channel. In a sense, you are doing what I was talking about, which is as you become more financially strong yourself, stable or whatever, you start to give more to the world. Like you kind of expand yourself and your influence. I mean, you've done that yourself, so I guess you've already done it. In my case, compared to you, I don't have kids and I don't have a wife, so I can actually kind of swing out a little farther than you can. I know if you got kids and you got people to protect and whatnot, you're in a bit of a more there's certain things you can't risk, right? And that also will play into your investment strategy. Like you're more into the oil stuff, which is probably less torque than some of the stuff that I'm in. I'm in the oil stuff too, but I'm still probably more swinging for the fences with some of these smaller cap, like junior miners and stuff like that, which I understand is risky, especially when you get diluted. It sucks, but if we hit this next phase where we go into a mining boom and that XAU to gold ratio starts to go, which is the miners versus the gold, we're going to have the miners ripping on a commodity, like the miners outperforming a commodity which is outperforming. It's like a double outperformance. Yep. I mean, it could be a good year. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, it could be insane. So here's the thing with the gold and silver, though. They only work for a very short period of time, and then they don't work at all like anywhere else. So the market conditions that are coming hopefully are conducive for the exact thing that you want. The question is, when is it going to take off? We're right there at the gate or the door. The door hasn't opened yet. We're right there. When that thing swings open and we break through, there could be some crazy things that happen. I definitely do.
I'm here, baby. And then you don't get married. I mean, at a certain point you got to sell, because these things can pull back pretty hard, as we've seen. They'll pull back. And I think that's why you want to keep educating yourself. You want to know, okay, was that just a hype buy? Like, is this going up just because everything's going up, or is this actually legit? And if it's legit, maybe you'll take some of your winnings from some other stuff. And that's what kind of separates the more advanced guys from the rookies. And, I've been developing myself from rookie status to more advanced as far as, like I said, calling up the CEOs, telling me about what they're doing and whatnot. You learn every day, basically. So I think that's kind of what it comes down to, in my opinion, is you got to be able to learn about various topics as best as possible, synthesize what everyone's saying, come up with your own opinion so you think for yourself. You want to be able to hear everyone and then distill it. A lot of people, as we've seen, what?
I think that's really hard to do too, because there's a lot of people with varying opinions on YouTube, especially, that you've got bears, you've got bulls, and everybody's disagreeing, and it is kind of hard sometimes to figure out who's right and who's wrong. What I try to do is just take all of it off the table and just look at the charts, look at kind of the macro picture, and then make my own decision on where we are. That's when you become ultra powerful, is when you start making your own decisions and you stop listening. I mean, you can listen to what they have to say. You can kind of test it on the charts, test it on the data. And if you don't see things line up perfectly, then it's like, I don't know if this is directly, like worthwhile. But there are some people who I think you listen to that I think have pretty good, solid, fundamental arguments. But there isn't as many as what most people think.
Agreed. I mean, something that you said in one of your videos is, as you get more familiar with the work world, you've been in your career a little longer. I'm 32 now. You start to realize some people don't know as much about what they're talking about as I originally thought.
There's a bunch.
And as you start to learn more, you kind of become more powerful in that sense, because a couple of years ago, I would have just taken what they said at face value and thought, these people are smart. You know, these guys, look at the way they're dressed. Look at their hair, nicely combed. They know what they're talking about. But as you start to like get a bit of knowledge, you're like, I don't know about that one. On that note, I'll just sort of say, like, if you're in professional finance or something like that, you once again have boundaries as far as what you can do. The ability to listen to different people and think and know where they're coming from. This guy's managing a bunch of money. He can't go into certain things because his clientele are going to get, has a down day. They're going to get upset. He's got to tell them why the stock's down, whatever. Everyone's in their own little box, and that goes into how they make decisions and where they put their money. In my position, there's no boxes. I can do whatever I want. And anyways, those are just different things to factor in as far as what makes people decide to do different things. You got your family and whatnot. You're doing more of the oil, whatever.
Well, yeah, it's one of my larger positions. I still have a bunch of uranium and other stuff that are more speculative. If we get a push, I'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, you're already fine. Yeah. I mean,
I'll be fine.
We're all fine.
I'll be happy with the gains.
Yeah. Well, I think yeah. I don't know.
Anything else you want to share?
Not really. I said I didn't want this to go too long because I kind of like when the videos are tight, like 40 minutes, I think I said. Okay. I don't know. We might be at an hour. I don't know when we started exactly, but I think this is a good time to wrap it up. For the audience, if anyone, if people have stuck around, I do hope to provide, some sort of information as far as the Alberta oil scene periodically. Like that was my original intention, is like going to Alberta, getting involved in the oil scene. We invest in companies in this area, Crew Energy and all these guys. Like I kind of, rub shoulders with them in a sense to different degrees, right? I've only been here 3 months. Actually, it's only been 2 months. So anyways, still pretty new, but as, whatever. I was hoping to be kind of like a recurring guest.
Okay. Well, we'll have you on again. Get your update on what's going on there.
Yeah.
And and then we'll have you, periodically check in. So thanks for coming on, Gabe. And if people want to reach out to you, what's your Twitter?
Alberta OG. If you can see that, Alberta OG, like O&G, Alberta OG.
Okay. Well, that's what we got, guys. If you made it to the end, put in the comment section, Alberta OG. All right.
I like it.
We'll catch everybody later.
Yeah.